It's Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods.
Six the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. It's a Tuesday, which means you survived Monday. Congratulations. How's that one work? Should I keep that one?
Today's show is sponsored by Rabid Penguin Spray, the only spray guaranteed to keep dangerous rabid penguins at bay.
Joe, there is actually one that I can tell you about. If you go to Little America, they have one on display as you walk through the front doors. Just so you know, it's going to be a busy morning. Hang in.
Warning, this show contains reference to guns, liberty, limited government, low taxation, the cult of climate change, free thinking, cigar smoking, short people, rubber chickens, Karen's bureaucracy, liberal buzzwords, tour runs, traffic, toilets, terrible jokes, and more. No apologies will be issued. Guest callers may express any opinion they want without fear of being canceled. Unless you're a loudmouth jerk like Dave, then Glenn will hang up on you. Strap in, hold on to your coffee, and feel free to participate.
This disclaimer does not refer to every person named Dave, just one particular Dave from San Francisco. We know a lot of Daves. They call this show all the time, and they're great people. So don't call this program and complain that we use your name. That would be a real Dave move, Dave.
Now, if you're waking up this morning and your eyes are a little on the red side, and I noticed it too, and my sinuses were hurting a little bit, and oh, wow, what is it? Well, I actually knew, because before I go to bed, I talk to my telephone. I'm not going to say the telephone's name here because it'll answer me. It's right in front of me. Yeah, it's like I'm talking behind someone's back here. Yeah, I'm not going to say her name. Should pay attention if I... Anyway, I ask, what's tomorrow's weather? And the first thing I hear is smoke alert. And there's actually a advisory in effect right now. If you are anywhere, let's start up in Sheridan, and we'll head all the way down into Casper and sometime beyond. All the way down I-25, but also some areas you can go all the way over to almost to Gillette and down, too. In fact, I would say all the way past Gillette and down when I look at the smoke map. And then if you're way over there, let's say in Du Bois and Rawlins, places like that, you're not doing much better either. So we have, there's a few wildfires out there, yes. Many of them have actually calmed down quite a bit. We're doing good. We just got to be very careful. There's really a good chance of any little spark starting a big fire right now because it's gotten so dry out there. But the two really big fires right now, one, of course, is over around Togety Pass, and the other one just north of Sheridan up in the Bighorns. And those two especially are putting out a lot of smoke. And it's just a matter of where the wind is blowing all of that, and that's why some of you this morning over large areas around Wyoming are waking up to a smoke advisory because of this. Now, while I'm doing this, I'm calling up. So Togety Pass is still open. Ooh, I might have to go ahead and... Yeah, I'm going to write something up about this this morning. I haven't done this yet. Highway 14 between Dayton, Wyoming, and that's, again, north of Sheridan. If you're heading up to the Bighorn Mountains and want to get up and over, Highway 14 going from Dayton, Wyoming, up into the mountains. And then there's a place up there which is Burgess Junction, where the road splits to 14A and Highway 14. That's where you can start driving again. But between Burgess Junction and the town of Dayton, which is, by the way, just a cute little town at the base of the Bighorns, that's where Highway 14 is closed right now because of the fire, and a lot of that smoke is just pouring down on us. So that's for this morning. Now, while I'm talking to you about this, I'm going to go ahead and check. You should try this if you haven't, especially because it gets so windy in Wyoming. There is a website called Windy. It's an app, too, which I use on my phone for a lot of things. And it shows the directions of the wind and the smoke and so on. The good news is that as we start going through this morning, the wind direction changes. And especially, I'm going to up the forecast here. Yeah, for those people in southern Wyoming, so let's take a look at Wheatland, Douglas, Glen Rock, and Midwest KC, up to Buffalo. At some point, the wind just starts changing direction, and everything is going to get pushed north. So as we get through a little bit later on, that should clear us out as far as the southern part of Wyoming of smoke. Those people, though, that are up in the northern part of Wyoming, especially around Sheridan, places like that, that's a whole different ballgame. And Gillette, I think you might actually be cleared out. All of this is going to be pushed into Montana, which sucks for Montana. That's, not good. Now, on that note, I also wrote up another little story about some of the fires. So just be aware of the smoke index this morning as you're starting your day, which, again, should clear up as the day goes on. Now, on that note, let's take a look at some of the fires out there, which, those fires got an upper hand on us during the course of the weekend. So we have the Elk Fire and the Pack Trail Fire, to name two, and then all of those that are over toward Togety Pass as well really got out of hand during the course of the weekend. I mean, just sparked up and got way out of hand. Now, I do have some video, which is worth watching. If you go to Wake Up Wyoming site this morning, and at some point, if you have the Wake Up Wyoming app, Miss Mary will alert it out. There's a lot of people taking pictures and video who live in that area. So I got some of the best of that, and I put it up on a post. One guy who lives right to the east of the Bighorn Mountains, so you better believe he's in a lot of smoke this morning. But he's got this perfect view of the fire, and that fire is, you can see it during the course of the weekend get out of control. When he first starts to shoot the video of this, you can just see some smoke coming out of the Bighorn Mountains, and you think, wow, that doesn't look really good, does it? And then as it goes on, and he does time and date stamps, I think from Friday all the way through till Monday, as he continues to go out, I think he's on his back porch, and just shooting time-lapse of what's happening with that fire. The most impressive part of it, as you get to the last third of the video, is when he's shooting video at night. Because it's not just that the mountains are glowing. You can see the flames. And that's really impressive seriously impressive to watch those flames. So if you want a good look at what's been progressing over the past few days, and then there's other people who have taken still pictures and so on, and the amount of smoke that's pouring out of there has just absolutely been amazing. And I even put up a story yesterday about how at times, and this has happened a couple of times anyway, short-lived, but when you got a fire that is that intense, at times it can actually create its own weather. And that's not always a good case. It would be good if it created a thunderstorm with a lot of rain and it dumped all that rain, but we don't have that much moisture in the air right now. So if it did actually create a thunderstorm, it would just be more lightning, which would just be expanding the storm, and that's certainly something that we don't want to see. So that's your update this morning. If you're anywhere listening to me and you are getting up this morning thinking, wow, my eyes are watering. Why do I have that little tickling sensation at the back of my sinuses here and things like that? Why am I coughing a little bit? There is a bit of a smoke advisory to begin your day, which ought to clear up as the morning goes on. Coming up on 6:15, Wake Up Wyoming.
I'm just at the base of a hiking trail. A buddy of mine was like, hey, Paul, do you want to go hiking today? And I was like, yeah, I'd love to be out of breath while we talk for 3.5 hours. I love hiking. You get to be outside and you get to be aware of coyotes and you get to carry around a wooden stick like you're a wizard, and you get to say things like, great day for a hike, and you get to hide and pee at the same time, and you get good cardio and blisters, and you get to ask questions like, do you think that's poisonous? And you get to pass by other hikers and not say anything and just go. And you get to take hiking selfies to show everybody that you're healthier than they are, and you get to see who's going to be the first to say, should we turn around? So I love hiking.
You asked for an expert. We didn't have the budget for that. Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods, weekdays 6 to 10 a.m. and 24/7 on the Wake Up Wyoming app.
I wouldn't be living as good of a life with ALS if it wasn't for MDA. MDA is helping people live stronger and love longer. Learn more at MDA.org today.
.3 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. Morning, Steve. Steve and Casper just sent me a note. I did see that one, Steve, on social media. That's good. The girl who was in the Olympics that was supposed to be doing the breakdancing and absolutely sucked at it. Someone dressed her up as a Halloween skeleton and posed her in that pterodactyl or whatever that pose was. You know, with her arms. I guess it was supposed to be a T-Rex pose. I'm not sure what that was supposed to be. But anyway, yeah, they even have the whole outfit. So everybody knows who she is. That meme has not died yet. Not yet, anyway. She said she worked very hard on that dance routine. I don't believe she did, but unless she doesn't understand what hard work is. All right. Wyoming legislators, this is Cowboy State Daily story, stopped short of banning running over wolves with your snowmobile. They're still working on this. This has to do, of course, with the story that guy knocked over a wolf. The thing was still alive. He basically duct taped the muzzle up and so on, took it to the bar to show to his friends, put a bunch of posts on social media, horrified people. So what they're trying to work on is a piece of legislation that says if you do run the thing down with a snowmobile, you got to kill it right away, which some people who live outside of Wyoming are going, what are you doing? That's horrible. Well, I've gotten calls from ranchers that are out in Wyoming on this topic where they say, look, it's a predator. And we have livestock out here. And so we're allowed to kill it. So we'll take it down by any means necessary. Here's the story, Cowboy State Daily. Allowing people to run over wolves and other predators with snowmobiles makes Wyoming look barbaric. Protesters of the practice told legislators Monday at the Capitol during a hearing that they were having. Even so, the Wyoming Legislators Joint Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources Committee, boy, that committee covers a lot of territory, voted to forward the bill and allow it to continue. However, the bill would stifle the punishment for those who didn't immediately kill the predators after they ran it over the vehicle. That's what they're shooting for. No pun intended on the shooting for. If you do this, if you see a predator and you go after it and that's the way you knock it down, you need to finish it off right away. The bill and the objections against it, the story says, are the latest in the continuing ripple effects of the report that came, the killing of a wolf in Daniel, Wyoming. That was back in February that we talked about. So the story says before voting unanimously to forward the bill. So that doesn't pass the bill. That just means we think we have a bill that should be in front of the Wyoming legislative session next time. So if the process continues. And just so you know, your legislators are officially in session for a very short period of time. But the work to get legislation ready for the legislative session goes all year long. There's always committees, there's always discussions happening somewhere. So there's always meetings going on somewhere. And public input as well, like is happening here. And then the bills that are all put together are sent to the legislative session, and we'll see what happens after that. All right. So let me see. The Daniel incident put Wyoming on international spotlight, according to them. Okay, fine. Let's see. Concerns were also raised over how the failure to ban running predators down with vehicles could affect Wyoming's tourism industry. Which, in case my thought is, I don't think it will. Banning it should be a no-brainer, South Carolina resident told the committee, who made her second cross-country trip to Wyoming to admonish officials in person. And she's the one who says, this will affect your tourism. I really don't think it will. But the story says, if the bill passes and signed into law, penalties could include up to 6 months in jail and about $1,000 fine, plus losing hunting and fishing privileges for up to 3 years for anybody who runs a predatory animal down and allows it to suffer afterwards. Now, I think when I look at this story, okay, they want to pass some legislation. This is really an isolated incident. And the odds of this ever happening again, I think, are slim to none. After the first one got such bad publicity, especially for the man who did bring the wolf into the bar and showed it off, things were not good for him after that. And so, okay, they want to pass a piece of legislation. And my thought is, okay, if you want to do that, go ahead, do that. But I just don't think it'll ever really happen again. Anyway, not after the outrage of the first time it happened. But, okay, you think you need to pass a piece of legislation, go ahead. Do that. Still, though, predators, and I think Wyoming ranchers out there understand when they go after a predator, they'll do it pretty much by any means necessary. And if they get the predator and kill it, if they did it in some way that wasn't legal, well, they're just going to make sure, and just being straight with you, they're going to make sure that nobody really knows about it, is how that's going to work. So, yeah, the idea that somebody would go ahead and duct tape a live wolf up and drag it to another bar, I think that was a one-time thing. We'll never see it again. Coming up on 6:30, local news coming your way. After local news, update on your weather forecast, and you and I go rolling back into it. 888-97-WOODS, the phone number. That's 888-97-WOODS. Again, if you're waking up this morning in parts of Wyoming and you're thinking, wow, my eyes feel itchy, and maybe you're having some sinus problems. So there is a smoke alert out right now for the morning hours. Anyway, we'll see what happens this afternoon. I think it clears out this afternoon because the wind's changing direction as I'm talking to you right now. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Friday. The best talk show host in the state, within his price range. Tune in to Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods, weekdays at 6.
6:36 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. Okay, let's see. Let's put the barbell story aside. You're going to love that one, but for just a minute, I'm going to put the barbell story aside. And switch on over to, I like this kind of a thing. A truck caught fire off of Interstate 25, and a whole bunch of Wyomingites stopped in to help out. So this, again, Cowboy State. And Renee is the one who is the reporter who was there for it. She said when the DoorDash driver's truck caught fire, Interstate 25 east of Casper Sunday, all kinds of help showed up. So she was there. But this guy wasn't making a whole lot of money, put some money into a truck, just pickup truck, and something happened, and the sucker caught fire. Now he's on the side of the road. In fact, I'm looking at the picture here, and there's Casper Mountain in the background. And there's one guy is wearing a T-shirt called Douglas Strong, is what the T-shirt says. Bunch of motorists pull over and just start helping this guy out. Fire extinguishers were coming out. He didn't have anything really to help himself with. It's good to see people jumping in like that, and I always expect to see that in Wyoming. I've watched many times before when someone's been stuck out somewhere and folks start pulling over, can I help you? And just the way people are out here, and it's understandable because when you consider the way Wyoming developed, people in the beginning had no choice but to rely on each other. It didn't matter if folks liked each other or not. They relied on each other. And so all hands on deck, everybody pitches in. So here's a guy with his pickup truck. The engine is on fire. Folks pulling over and helping out any way they can, which I appreciate that in Wyoming. Now let's go to another area that has a similar kind of a culture. So in Tennessee, North Carolina, that area had already been hit by a lot of rain remember there's a hurricane that went up through Florida. And as it passed through Georgia and got into the Carolinas and Tennessee, loads of rain just come dropping down. Just loads of rain dropping down. And it saturated the area. And yeah, there were some floods and so on, but they dealt with it. Then this next hurricane comes. Now, we still haven't had that many hurricanes this hurricane season. It's been rather quiet out there, but 2 in a row. So the next storm comes. Yes, it did some damage scraping up the coast of Florida. The main storm surge hit, like I said, in the Big Bend area. Thankfully, that's a marshy area. So the strongest punch of the storm surge hit in an area that's mostly marsh. That's a good thing. But then all that rain heads right up through Georgia, up into the Carolinas and Tennessee, up in the Appalachian Mountains here and Smoky Mountains. And that area had already been fully saturated. And so you've seen what's happened over the past few days. I was surprised. In fact, I was on a call with my sister yesterday because she's got the family cabin up in the Carolina Mountains there, and we're worried about what happened to it, but all the people up, the whole towns were wiped out. And it was mudslides, really just those mountains, which used to be among the tallest on the planet, have worn down over many millions of years. And they're still big, beautiful mountains, but they're rolling piles of mostly dirt, with rocky cores, of course, right? And so when that gets oversaturated, it just doesn't matter how many trees and bushes are up there, mudslides begin, and that's what happened. So as that area gets wiped out, they're out of cell service, bridges are cut off. There's a lot of people up there no one even knows, and I can tell you it's easy to get lost up there. It's not like Wyoming mountains. It's so thickly wooded up there with many different varieties of trees and bushes and so on. Like our family cabin, it's in the woods. Nobody can really see where it is. People drive right by it all the time, and nobody can see where it is. There's a gully between the road, which is a little two-rut dirt road up the side of a mountain. And there's a gully between the road and the cabin filled with trees and bushes. So we're right there. Nobody can see us. And that's the case all up and down through the Carolinas and Tennessee. And so people are rushing to help out anywhere they can. And that's the culture. People just jump in and help other people just because that's the way it's always been. They can't really rely on outside help. And while I have always appreciated that our governments, from the state government to the federal government, will always try to jump in with help, as always, they're very inefficient with it. I would like to have that kind of help be efficient, but FEMA and so on, they're just not that good at it. I would like them to get really good at it. What is good, when our National Guard gets involved and they bring in the Army to rescue and so on, those guys are good. They know what they're doing. But FEMA and other government agencies just really suck at it. But people up in those mountains have learned to rely on each other, just like we in Wyoming do. They always have. And so just like I was watching that yesterday, or reading the story yesterday about the guy on the side of the road in Wyoming with his engine on fire and all the people who just pull over to help. And I'm thinking, same thing up in the Appalachian Mountains. Everybody's there's no question. And it doesn't matter if you don't like your neighbor. That has nothing to do with it. You just jump in and help. World needs more of that. Quick story here. I'll get into more later on this morning. Headline is, now even barbells are problematic. Okay. This is a story about going to the gym and working out as a form of privilege and politics and so on, when all you wanted to do is go work out. Apparently, if you're someone who likes to keep in shape, that's a problem. We'll get into that later this morning.
In the last 11 years, 115 people died of weightlifting accidents in a gym. In that same 11 years, only one person died of eating a donut. Make good choices, people.
Honestly, he's just happy to be here. Catch Glenn Woods on Wake Up Wyoming, weekdays at 6 on air, on Alexa, and on the Wake Up Wyoming app.
6:48 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. Off to the icebox we go. Frank Gambino just ran the spooky gauntlet and made it into the studio.
The skeleton guy is dead.
Yes.
No, I mean, like he's on the floor.
Oh, he fell over?
Yeah.
I'll have to put him back up.
With the gravestone.
Oh, okay.
So he's dead?
Okay.
Hold on, let me see. I don't think
sleeping on the job.
Well, no, I don't think.
Yeah, okay. Frank is going to check. He's looking out the door.
The gravestone did not crush him.
Okay. But he did fall over, so I have to put the skeleton guy back. Okay. Yeah. So there's a skeleton guy, not full size, and he's standing there holding a tombstone up, and apparently he just fell over.
Glenn, have you seen these skeletons that people put in their front yard?
Yes. Massive.
They're bigger.
Yes.
Than they were last year. I'm talking like 12 feet maybe?
I have been thinking, I'm not going to do it, but imagine if I bought one of those and put it down the hallway, just reaching over everybody as they came in. But now here's what happens, folks, is since my favorite holiday is Halloween, I was born just moments before Halloween, then I always like to take the hallway down here where the studios are, and I decorate it for Halloween. So I'll put the skeleton guy back up. There's a few more things I need to add, but don't worry, Frank, the candy will be there.
Well, that's the most important thing. I don't care how many skeletons you have.
So here's how it's going to work. When you get to the end of that first hallway, underneath the big spider, will be a stool with a ball of candy there.
Oh,
yes, and you can just go ahead and have at that. And if you don't tell anybody else in the building that it's there, that's more for you. I'm just saying.
We really don't have a whole bunch.
No, but I'll go ahead and.
But I'll gladly hit that
out.
first
I'm
and last.
Sure you will. Now, and then that stays there until October 31st, and then the 1st of November, it's gone. That's why I always do that to people. I'm not one of those holiday people that keep. I know your Christmas tree is up year round.
Oh yeah,
That's
yeah, I know. All right, in college football, it's been quite a week for it will be a quiet week for the Wyoming Cowboys. They will have a bye this Saturday, and they'll have time to bask in the glow of that 31-19 win over the Air Force on Saturday in Laramie. So that was victory number 1 after 4 brutal losses. Quarterback Evan Swoboda, who did not play well at all in those first 4 games, redeemed himself with a solid effort against the Falcons. After a very slow start in the first half, Swoboda made plays with his feet. He rushed for 70 yards and 2 touchdowns and was careful throwing the football. 15 of 21 for 165 yards and no interceptions. He also got his nose broken in that game, so that's a badge of honor. This bye week is coming at a good time for the Pokes. They have a long list of injuries, and UW plays San Diego State on October the 12th. And with all this college realignment stuff that's been going on, the Mountain West Conference, after losing 5 teams to the Pac-12, are in search of 2 schools so they can have 8 full-time members. Media reports indicate that talks between the league and Texas El Paso have progressed, and UTEP would be a good fit for the Mountain West. They have a long-time rivalry with New Mexico and competed against Wyoming for years in the old days of the Western Athletic Conference, and those Cowboy basketball games with the Miners in the late 1980s when the Bear, Don Askins, was UTEP's coach, was just legendary. Mountain West also has serious interest evidently in Texas State, so we'll see what happens next. In baseball, one of the best players in the history of the major leagues, Pete Rose, passed away at the age of 83. He had a career like none other. A major league leader in career hits with 4,256, a 17-time All-Star, 3,562 games played, a major league record, a career .303 hitter, and played with a couple of World Series winning teams in Cincinnati. They called him Charlie Hustle. He ran the first after a walk, and he ran off the field after the third out on defense every single time. On the other side of the ledger, Rose was permanently banned from baseball for gambling and betting on his own team, not to lose, but to win, at times when he was the manager of the Cincinnati Reds from 1985 through 1987. While his baseball credentials were more than enough to be in the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, he was never inducted because of those gambling issues, and there won't be very many players like Pete Rose moving forward, that's for sure. High school volleyball, the season moving along right now in 4A. Laramie is 20-1, Kelly Walsh 20-2, Cheyenne East 12-10, Natrona 10-12, Cheyenne Central 6-14, and Cheyenne South is 3-19. That's it in sports.
So while Rose will never make it into the Hall of Fame, he'll never be out of the records books.
No. Everyone knows that his credential, what he did, is Hall of Fame worthy. There's no doubt about it. But baseball is very, very, very. They're sticklers on this gambling thing.
I can understand why.
And they're not going to bend.
No, I get it, because we've had some instances in the past where games were rigged.
Well, yeah, back in the 1919 Black Sox in Chicago. That's where it started. They threw players out of the league for trying to throw that
there you
thing.
go. But if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
Field of Dreams?
Yeah.
The movie, they finally played that game for real?
Yeah.
As ghosts?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
I remember that.
There's a reference.
He comes out of the corn thing. Yeah,
that's right.
He's a ghost.
Okay.
Yeah.
Coming up on some local business we have to take care of. We're going to roll into news time, national, local update on the weather forecast. You and I go rolling back into it again. It's Wake Up Wyoming. 7:06 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. Put Monday behind you. You survived. Let's move on. Tuesday.
Today's show is sponsored by Rabid Penguin Spray, the only spray guaranteed to keep dangerous rabid penguins at bay.
See, I delivered that Tuesday line better last hour. I'll try it again. I'll get it. I'll hang in there.
Warning. This show contains reference to guns, liberty, limited government, low taxation, the cult of climate change, free thinking, cigar smoking, short people, rubber chickens, Karen's bureaucracy, liberal buzzwords, tour runs, traffic, toilet, terrible jokes, and more. No apologies will be issued. Guest callers may express any opinion they want without fear of being canceled. Unless you're a loudmouth jerk like Dave, then Glenn will hang up on you. Strap in, hold on to your coffee, and feel free to participate.
This disclaimer does not refer to every person named Dave, just one particular Dave from San Francisco. We know a lot of Daves. They call this show all the time, and they're great people. So don't call this program and complain that we use your name. That would be a real Dave move, Dave.
The first thing for those just getting up, if your eyes are kind of itchy and your sinuses may be bothering you a bit, things like that, there is a smoke alert out there for, especially for people who have asthma and other such problems for a good part of Wyoming, and that's mostly, I'd say a good part of Wyoming. If we head over to Togety Pass, there's fires there that are still going, very smoky, and that's blowing right on through Du Bois and on out. Okay, so that's one. Then, and there's other fires in Wyoming, but the big smokers. Then we head up to just above Sheridan. There's the fire that's, Highway 14 is closed, by the way. Half of it. If you try to go up, let's say, Highway 14, up the east side of the Bighorns, about all the way over until there's a junction there that splits off, that's about where it's all closed. So you're not getting, and that's because of the smoke and the fire, and visibility is near zero in some places, so that's closed. And that's also smoke that's just pouring down through Wyoming. Now, that should stay in effect for the morning. We will see after that if it clears out, because the wind direction has changed, and as it changes, it should be blowing things in a completely different direction, just so you know. Off to Steve. Morning, Steve. Wait a second, Steve. Hang on. I got that there. There you go.
Helping each other in Wyoming.
Yes, sir.
About 3, maybe 4 years ago, we had a very, very heavy snowstorm, and I think it was March. And I had 5-foot drifts in my drive. But anyways, I got out there with a shovel, and I went about 100 yards all the way from the garage doors right down to the road. As I got to the bottom, and about to start my way back up to widen it, my neighbor from across the road was out there with a tractor. And he was just shoveling away, clearing his drive and so forth. There was no way that he didn't see me. Didn't say a word.
No.
Not a word. The kicker of the story is this guy is from Colorado.
Ah, okay.
So there's a contrast for you about the folks from Colorado. Their spin on things.
Yeah.
Just thought that might be an interesting contrast.
I think that is, because a few years ago, we had that, it might have been the same thing, big snowfall where I'm at, and there's and I'm up sort of on a hill overlooking a golf course, and that whole area was just closed down. The roads in front of my house and so on, just completely closed down. And of course, you always got those people, Steve, who can't help themselves. They go out and drive in that anyway. And that intersection got all jacked up with cars high-centered, and there's about maybe 10 cars out there, not kidding, all stuck there. I did call the local authorities. They managed to get a police officer up there. But what was amazing to see, I was one of them, neighbors came out of houses with shovels just to try to get people back on the road. And when on the road, I mean their wheels were up off the road, to try to get them out of there. So I was so happy to see everybody who saw what was going on just grabbed a tool and went out there and started helping out. And that includes, this is where the culture comes from. My next door neighbor to the right of me from where I'm standing at my front door, that guy, his family's from Alabama. And that's another one of those cultures where you help your neighbors. So when he moved up here, he fit right into Wyoming, didn't he? He just grabbed a tool and went out there and didn't ask anything because people needed help. But when you got some guy from Colorado, he's not lifting a finger.
No. And I've been the recipient of, people helping me when I've gotten stuck.
Yeah.
But this guy, like they say, it's all about me.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
all right.
I just thought I'd share that.
I appreciate that, Steve.
Thank you for taking the call, you and Miss Mary.
Absolutely appreciate it. Well, and what Steve was talking about, you missed it last hour. So there's a story that popped up on Cowboy State Daily that I really appreciated. Just outside of Casper, there's a guy in a pickup truck, and this guy is doing the door dashing, so he's not making a lot of money. And he just spent what money he did have getting that pickup truck fixed. And he's heading down the highway outside of Casper, and he has to pull over because his engine's smoking, pops the hood open, he's got a fire. Now what? And all sorts of vehicles were pulling over to help out, people jumping out of their vehicles with fire extinguishers. One guy in the picture that they have there has a Douglas Strong T-shirt on, as in Douglas, Wyoming. So, yeah, Wyomingites just jumping in and helping. And I was noticing there's a culture of that, and then there's the people up in the Smoky Mountain, well, the Appalachian chain up there. You've seen what's happened. Whole towns have been wiped out by that rain after this. The first tropical storm, it was a tropical storm when it hit, dumped so much rain and flooded out those mountains. And then this second one comes along, and it's completely saturated, which is what caused the mudslides. And you've seen whole towns got wiped out. And people who live up in those mountains, nobody knows if they're alive or dead or if they need help. There's no getting to them. There's no knowing. Cell service is dead up there. Nobody can get any communication going. And so neighbors are just jumping in because that's what you do. And certain cultures are like that. These are the cultures, like in Wyoming, whether you liked your neighbor or not, to survive in this state when the state was being founded, that's what you did. You helped each other. You didn't have to like the guy. You helped each other. And the same thing when you get up into the Carolina Mountains, or my neighbor who's from, down south as well, those are the states where that culture just exists. Just go help your neighbor just because they need it. Now, as I was picking on the guy from Colorado, and so was Steve, to be fair, the farmers and ranchers, the old school Coloradans, those people still live within that culture. It's the big city folk, and I think the culture is different there because when you're in the big city, you got to be really suspicious of people and be on your guard all the time. It's an entirely different culture. New York is famous for that because in New York, if you see someone coming at you walking down the sidewalk in New York, don't make eye contact. You be careful. Do not make eye contact with a stranger. You never know what's going on. But when you live in a place like a southern state or a state that's way out west, then you find yourself helping people out because we just rely on people. We just rely on each other. And so even the folks up in the Carolinas don't count on the federal government to offer too much help now that they've been buried by all of this mud and have to dig their towns out. The federal government will show, but it'll be limited and lame compared to what neighbors will do for each other. Nancy. Morning, Nancy.
Morning. Say about these poor folks that got flooded out back there from Helene. From what I understand, Biden has not done a lot, or if anything, to help them. Mm-hmm. I suggest they call in the Cajun Navy. Now, those people know water.
Yes.
So that's just an idea.
I appreciate that. In fact, I'm going to build on what you just said. Thanks for calling, Nancy. And by the way, I always say I love her voice. The Cajun Navy was started, again, Southern. Okay, these are Southern people who liberals often pick on. Southern people with their Southern pride. And they help each other out. So that's when Hurricane Katrina hit. And let's not forget, when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, the federal government was really not very helpful. Remember down in New Orleans they told people who were stuck in the city, go to the stadium. So people did, and they filled the stadium, and they were outside in the stadium, and nobody showed up to help them. Who's good at it with your federal government, and even your state government, your National Guard, and then when you get to Army and so on, rescue, those guys are phenomenally good. But FEMA, absolutely not. So when New Orleans and surrounded Louisiana and so on was all flooded out, they needed just to get people out there and rescue. Just boats, get out there and rescue. And the Cajun Navy was started with a bunch of guys. Most of them have just bass boats, which, as you know, flat bottom, shallow riding, and can get out there into the bayou areas. And they just started rescuing people. And I do remember the governor of Louisiana at the time He had shown up on site where a bunch of Cajun Navy guys were about to put their boats out, and they were working with a local sheriff. And the sheriff was on the phone with someone from the federal government who was telling them, you can't send those boats out there. It's a liability. And the governor stood there and listened to the local sheriff screaming at the guy from FEMA and telling him he was going to, editing the language, I'm going to send the damn boats out there anyway. And the Cajun Navy exists to this day. They're just people with boats who know how to handle water like that because they grew up in it. And they just show up whenever there's a disaster like this. They just show up and help. Just because it's needed. Which, again, I hate to say it, but your federal government's not very good at that. 717, Wake Up Wyoming.
Like a strong cup of coffee in the morning.
For the future,
tasteless, but it'll get you through the day. Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods.
Research to help you take control of the situation with your family and manage the disease together. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together. Visit alz.org/time to talk. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
7:22 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. My name's Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. So let's see some of the comments. I catch everybody up to speed if you're just joining me. Story, Cowboy State Daily guy, and I love stories like this. Guy who just works for DoorDash, has a pickup truck, puts what money he has into getting it going. But the truck catches fire on Interstate 25 just outside of Casper. And the number of people from Wyoming that just pulled over, even some of them having fire extinguishers, and helped the guy out, was really impressive. And I was talking about the culture of that, like up in the Smoky and Appalachian Mountains. Most of the help that's being delivered up there is coming from just neighbors helping neighbors, local people doing what they do, just because that's what you do when you live in one of those states where the culture is you just pitch in and help. Or like my neighbor, when we had a big pile of snow that was choking an intersection up where I live, and cars just kept driving into it anyway, and everybody got stuck. There's like 10 cars out there stuck. And I grabbed some tools and went out to help dig people out at night, freezing cold, cars high-centered on snow because they shouldn't have been out there in the first place. And one of my neighbors, who's from Alabama, came out with his tools. Nobody asked. We all sorts of neighbors just went out with tools and just helped because that's the culture. So you take a look at Hurricane Katrina, help came from the Cajun Navy, which, by the way, Beth, thank you, Beth. Beth is in Cheyenne. She said the Cajun Navy's in Florida, helping out now, according to Newsmax, which it makes sense because Cajun Navy's, the boats they have are mostly bass boats. There's also some airboats, which are meant for areas like what you're seeing around Florida, what's up in the mountains, up the Appalachian Mountain chain, those kinds of rivers, and that was mostly mudslides. So their boats don't make a whole lot of sense there. And most of that water is now not running, it's just mud slicks that they have to deal with. So the Cajun Navy would be further down south. Jan in Cheyenne says, you are right. Country folks take care of each other. Second generation city people don't seem to care. Well, and I think they're also afraid to care. I really do think they are because, again, if you live in a major city, you're walking down the sidewalk, and did any of you remember the movie Crocodile Dundee? Crocodile Dundee, of course, growing up in the outback, right, of Australia. And he goes to, which city was he in? Was it New York for the first time or L.A.? I forget which one he was in. And he's walking down the street, and every time, you imagine how many people, the crush of people on streets in major cities like that, on the sidewalks there. And every time he passed someone, which was constantly, he was going, g'day, 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 trying to greet everybody because that's where he's from. But in a big city like New York or L.A., you don't make eye contact with somebody else. That's a scary thing. When you consider where they are, who would? Now, as far as locals helping, the Coast Guard, the local National Guard does a lot of help in any emergency situation. Big Red is over in Hawk Springs. He says, who is the Guard made of? Local people. Absolutely, they're helping their hometowns. They're helping their neighbors. Kevin in Wheatland, morning, Kevin. Katrina, the Coast Guard stepped up. Okay, now, there's another culture for you. As long as we keep woke out of the military, But if you think about it, when we do have a national emergency or just something big like a Hurricane Katrina or like what's happening up in the Appalachian Mountains right now or in Florida, it's your military in part, besides your local responders, your police, your fire department, and so on. But then they send in the National Guard. Those are, again, local people with training, military training. Coast Guard? Yes, absolutely. And that's why I also said there's been times we've sent the Army in because, well, they have rescue helicopters and so on. This is what they do. In wartime, they go rescue. So when they go into a situation where a storm hits, for example, and it looks like a war zone, this is what they train for. It's just they're not going to get shot at this time. And they know exactly how to go in and help people because this is what they train for. This is what they do. What I have a problem with is, remember in Hurricane Katrina, the response from FEMA. And other hurricanes after that, your federal government response is horrible as far as there's several agencies that were set up with really good intentions, but they become so heavily bureaucratic that I would be interested really in just closing them down. Yes, FEMA and other government agencies like that, close them down, and if we reopen them completely different than the way they've been operating before. Remember also all of the, go back to Katrina again, people needed homes after Hurricane Katrina because whole towns were wiped out. It wasn't just New Orleans, whole towns were wiped out. And FEMA had all of these trailers that they could put people in, temporary, even a little bit, a single wide but not as long, right, trailers for people that you can just go ahead and house folks in. And those trailers, they had thousands of them that just sat there and did absolutely nothing and eventually got moldy and had to be destroyed. And nobody was ever helped by them. But that's your government for you. That's how they're helping, right? And how many billions of dollars do these government agencies hand out every single year for natural disasters? And most of it just goes to the wrong people or disappears into the ether. So, yeah, it's the local help more than anything. And the help from those people who have been trained for it. It's your Army, your National Guard, your Coast Guard, your local police and fire department. God bless them. So thanks to everybody who jumped out of their vehicles and helped the guy that was stuck on the highway here in Wyoming with his engine on fire. That's just what people do when someone else is in need. No questions asked. All right, 7:29 is the time. Coming up on 7:30, local news update on your weather forecast. You and I go rolling back into it again. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Friday. Sure, this show is sustainable. We sequester all gas emissions to one room. Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods, live on AM 1030 and FM 95.1, weekdays at 6.
Time, Wake Up Wyoming. My name is Glenn Woods. Real quick, smoke alert again. I did get word yesterday that we could have some smoke issues for some people in Wyoming, so here's where we're at right now. The big fire, it's up above Dayton, or above Sheridan, if you will, Highway 14. Highway 14 up the Bighorn Mountains and back is closed, halfway across from Dayton, or I-25, if you will, all the way up until there's up in the Bighorns there's a split in Highway 14 and 14A, and that's where the road is still drivable. But on the east side of the mountain, east half, too much smoke, too much fire, too many workmen up there trying to put out the fire. This is a big one. And the smoke coming from there, so Dayton, Sheridan, on down to, and of course you got to go through a lot of the smaller Story and other towns down all the way to Buffalo. Almost as far, well, let's just continue down to KC, Casper, a lot of smoke there. And people that are out toward Gillette and Midwest and, places like that really smoked in right Wyoming. In fact, this goes all the way out to Rapid City, some of the worst of it. And then if you're way over on the western side of Wyoming, let's just start with Togety Pass and just move through Du Bois and on out. And that whole area, that's just smoky as all get out. If you're in Lander this morning, same area there. In fact, even if you're in Shoshone, you got a lot of smoke there. Now, shifting winds this morning ought to change that. But if you're just got bothered eyes and so on, you know the drill. And hopefully that wind, as it shifts today and picks up a little bit, will change. Don Day will be on with me in just a few minutes to talk about day weather, which we don't have much change as far as rain goes, but I'll ask him about those shifting winds. That ought to help. Something on our radar this morning. Dock workers go on strike at East and Gulf Coast ports. So, as if it was bad enough, right now on the East Coast, they already have problems, and most of the rain and problems were in the Appalachian Mountains. But still, we got some problems with those ports with the dock workers. And we go over to the West Coast, there's problems there. So, unionized dock workers, 36 East and Gulf Coast ports, on strike as of this morning. International Longshoremen Association, which represents 45,000 dock workers, began this first strike since 1977. It's been that long. After its 6-year contract with the U.S. Maritime Alliance, which represents employees, that expired last night. So they said that it will exempt cruise ships and military ships as well for the strike. But other than that, a lot of cargo is just not going to get around, which makes, I've heard people talk about, we'll have to see what happens, supply chain shortages. Again, we'll see what happens here. Report, apparently a new offer was made Monday afternoon, would have raised wages by nearly 50% over new contracts, as well as tripling employee contributions to retirement plans, which all sounds pretty good to me. Better health care, and kept language about automation in the deal, so they don't want to be automated out, in other words. But apparently that wasn't enough for these guys. They wanted more than that. Well, and I could sit here and try to get into, well, doesn't that mean 50% raise and all of that benefits? I don't know. To me, that sounds like a pretty good deal, but they didn't want to take it. An analysis by J.P. Morgan estimated the daily cost of a port strike on the East Coast for the port workers is about $3.8 billion to $5.5 billion per day just to slow down operations. President Biden administration tried to facilitate talks, the story says, between the two sides. He said that he won't use federal labor laws known as the Taft-Hartley Act to intervene on the strike. Under that law, Biden could take action that could result in an 80-day cooling-off period for negotiations to resume while the workers go back to work. In other words, you guys go back to work and just cool it for 80 days. We'll get back together and renegotiate this. U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the largest trade group representing American businesses, urged Biden in a letter to invoke the Taft-Hartley Act to protect our economy by avoiding a work stoppage. So that's where we are right now. This strike has just begun. Now, I'm not sure what else. I'm not trying to be critical of anyone here. I'm just looking at the deal they were offered, and I thought, that looked pretty good to me. But, all right, we'll see how long this takes. Just a few days or longer than that, don't know, but there's already worries about the supply chain across the United States, so here we go again.
This one's for the people who have ever felt the pain of stepping on a Lego. I know it hurts. This one's for the people who have ever felt the pain of losing $1 to a broken vending machine. It's sad. This one's for the people who's allergic to dogs. That must be rough. Get it? Rough. It's gonna be okay.
Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods.
Covering world-ending catastrophes for years to come. It's Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods. Find content, chat live, and listen on demand on the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app.
Off we go to talk to Don Day from Day Weather. Okay, Don, I get up, last night I heard, and I get up this morning and it's confirmed, bit of a smoke alert for a good part of the state right about now.
Yeah, the two fires, the one up, the Elk Fire that's up there by Sheridan, then the fire activity that's burning near Togety Pass. producing a lot of smoke, and with high pressure overhead, that tends to trap the smoke. And, it was a cold night last night, cool night. And that cool air, with that inversion layer that gets set up, it just traps the smoke.
Okay. Now, my hope is when I take a look at what the winds are forecasted to do, it shows them picking up and also pushing the smoke back up to, well, poor Montana, but they can have it. That's what I saw anyway. What do you see?
Well, yeah, the problem is that while the wind direction is going to shift, yesterday it was from the north, today it will come up from the south and southwest. That will push it that way, but the wind is going to be a factor in fighting those fires. Unfortunately, we're still looking at very low humidity, and these frontal systems keep going through Canada to our north, and all they're doing is causing our temperatures to go up and down a bit and making the wind pick up as they go through. So this is not the weather we want to get those fires out, that's for sure.
Yeah, and now that makes it a real tinderbox out there, because every time, even, I don't care if I'm driving by a forest or grasslands, and there's so much grass, and of course eastern Wyoming, I mean, any little spark could really set something up, and it seems to me anyway that the air's really dry about now.
Humidity's a rock bottom. It's typically a time of year where that happens. And that's why it's really critical to get through the next couple of weeks with nothing else starting up. So folks got to really be careful out there.
Okay, and that's what you've been saying in your forecast. Hang on for the next couple of weeks, and then maybe we have an out.
Yeah, the good news is we got 2 more weeks of nice weather. Bad news is we got 2 more weeks of nice weather.
Okay. So watch those cigarette butts, any chains out there. If you're going camping, sorry, no fires, and sorry about the smoke. All right. Thank you, Don. Appreciate it. Don Day with day weather. So, yeah, it's just going to be a bit of a problem for a little while longer, but hang in there. Couple of weeks, and the whole weather situation ought to change, and let's do a whole lot better. So we go over to the icebox now. Frank Gambino waiting by. Frank, remember when automobiles had really big trunks?
Yeah, really big.
Oh, yeah.
That they were big enough as kids when we went to the drive-in.
Yeah.
We can get 3 in there.
God, yeah.
Yeah, and they just locked it, thing, and it was good. And I think the people driving, they saved the grand total of $6.
Wow. Well, that was a big deal back then.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Well, that $6 gets spent at the snack bar,
Right.
Oh, okay. So
we all got really, so they didn't have to pay for us to get in.
Yes.
We got like free popcorn and a pop.
Well, I say that because here's a picture of a guy that I came across on social media, and he's showing off his new car, and he's lifted up the hood of the car, and I don't know what kind this is, but in the back, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gorgeous girls all wearing bathing suits, sitting there smiling in the trunk of his car. Now, if you can fit 5 gorgeous bathing suit babes in the trunk of your car, and I would like to know, who's this guy who's able to convince these women to crawl into the trunk of his car?
In today's world,
yes,
that's creepy.
That really is creepy, yeah. And it wouldn't have been creepy, but the
It'd have been creepy then.
The mafia came along.
Well, yeah, and
they made it a creepy thing.
Well, yeah, they used the trunks for different reasons.
Now that brings up the next question. Then, so if you are somebody who just offed somebody else, but you have a modern car, well, you can't put them in the trunk.
Why not?
There's no room.
Well, no, they are smaller. That's very true.
Yeah. Okay, you're not going to fit.
You can barely fit your luggage going on a trip.
So what you have to do then, either you're going to tie it to the roof or sit the guy up next to you in the car and just make it look like he's a passenger that's asleep.
Right, and that'll help you in the big cities in those HOV lanes.
Yeah. You want to go do something, or maybe just head over and rent a van from your local U-Haul.
Mm-hmm.
Toss them in the back of the van. That might work. And actually, I do know of some cases. Did you ever watch some of those murder TV shows?
Oh yeah.
There have been people who've rented U-Haul vans for that specific purpose. And now that I'm thinking about it, they had to rent those vans because the trunk of their car wasn't big enough to put a body in. What is America coming to, Frank?
Detroit should have thought about this years ago.
Okay. I really think they should have. What are we supposed to do with our bodies or our bikini clad babes.
Not in the trunk.
Yes. Frank, I am so glad that you and I every morning solve these kinds of problems for all of America.
Well, thank you. You're welcome. College football, it's a quiet week for the Wyoming Cowboys. They have a bye, so they will not play this Saturday, but it's time to bask in the glow of that 31-19 win over Air Force on Saturday in Laramie. It was victory number 1 after 4 brutal losses. Quarterback Evan Swoboda did not play very well at all in those first 4 games, but redeemed himself with a solid effort against the Falcons. After a slow start of the first half, Swoboda made plays with his feet. He rushed for 70 yards and 2 touchdowns and was careful throwing the football for going 15 of 21 for 165 yards and no interceptions. He also got his nose broken in that game on Saturday night, so that's a badge of honor right there. The bye week is coming at a good time for the folks because they have a long list of injuries, and UW plays San Diego State on October the 12th. And with all this college realignment stuff going on, the Mountain West Conference, after losing 5 teams to the Pac-12, are in search of 2 schools that will give them 8 full-time members is what the minimum they need. Media reports now indicate that talks between the Mountain West and Texas El Paso have progressed. And UTEP really would be a good fit for the Mountain West. They have a long-time rivalry with New Mexico and competed against Wyoming for years in the old days of the Western Athletic Conference. Boy, those Cowboy basketball games with the Miners in the late 1980s when UTEP was coached by the Bear, Don Haskins, they were just legendary. And the Mountain West has also indicated there's various media reports that the Mountain West has serious interest in Texas State. So we'll see what happens next. In baseball, one of the best players in the history of the major leagues, Pete Rose, passed away at the age of 83. He had a career like none other. A major league leader in career hits with 4,256, 17 times an All-Star, and he played in 3,562 games. That's a major league record. A career 303 hitter, and played with 2 World Series winning teams in Cincinnati. They call him Charlie Hustle. He ran the first base after a walk. He ran off the field after the third out on defense every single time. On the other side of the ledger, Rose was permanently banned from baseball for gambling and betting on his own team to win at times when he was the manager of the Cincinnati Reds. And his gambling deal from baseball was from 1985 through 1987. While his baseball credentials are more than enough to get to the Hall of Fame, he was never inducted because of his gambling issues. But there won't be too many players like Pete Rose moving forward, that's for sure, both on the great side and the not-so-great side. High school volleyball, the season is moving along, and 4A Laramie is 20-1, Kelly Walsh is 20-2. Cheyenne East 12-10, Natrona 10-12, Cheyenne Central 6-14, and Cheyenne South right now is 3-19. That's it in sports.
So some guy breaks his nose, and everybody around him is going, "Oh, that's so cool."
Pretty much.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's. You take one for the team.
Yeah, that's a guy. I think now, if you, of course, are doing something like, let's say you're playing hockey, and you're not missing a tooth or don't have a scar or two, then what are you doing? Are you just warming the bench?
Yeah, pretty much. And you know what? You take one for the team. You know what? And he's your starting quarterback, and that's what you're supposed to do.
Just the coolest thing ever.
Yes.
Forget those little marks on the helmet that they put on there when they've achieved some kind of goal.
You got the broken nose.
Yes, that's right.
Surpasses that.
All right. Thank you, Frank. Coming up on some local business we got to take care of. We're going to roll into news time after that national local update on the weather forecast. Oh, get into the 8 o'clock hour. Of course, that's going to be open phones. Let's wake up, Wyoming.
Friday.
Six the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. It's a Tuesday. You survived Monday. Congratulations.
Today's show is sponsored by Rabid Penguin Spray, the only spray guaranteed to keep dangerous rabid penguins at bay.
I know of 2 penguins in Wyoming. Don't worry, they're both dead. So we don't have to worry about them being rabid. And they're both at Little America locations. So if you go to either Little America location, you walk in the front door, you'll see these emperor penguins. They were captured alive, and they tried to bring them to Wyoming, and they died along the way because they couldn't handle the weather that we had here. No, if you're thinking, Wyoming weather sucks that much, well, to a penguin.
Warning. Wake Up Wyoming is about to enter daily open phones. This means that anyone will be allowed to call in and talk about anything. I mean, imagine if we actually allowed you on air to say anything you wanted. Scary, right? Well, we're just that brand of crazy. If you are offended by what other people think, then maybe you want to tune out right about now. Just saying. If you should choose to call, just remember, the more funny and interesting you are, the longer Glenn will keep you on the line. Obnoxious jerks will be hung up on. Dave. All right, strap in and let's do this thing.
888-97 what's the phone number? That's 888-97-WOODS. You can talk about what I'm talking about. Change the subject, fine by me. I've been just warning people all morning long. Depending on where you are, and that's most of Wyoming right about now, there is a air quality alert just because of the smoke from mainly just two fires. There's others out there, but it's mainly the two. The one over at Togety Pass and one just a little north of Sheridan and Bighorns. Both those two fires are creating an enormous amount of smoke. Not a lot of wind movement this morning, and cold air keeps that smoke low to the ground. And so, yeah, if you're getting up a bit irritated this morning because of your eyes, your sinuses, and so on, that would be why. Hopefully the wind picks up, which is not, it'll fan the fire, I know, but that wind will change direction and pick up a little bit later as the morning goes on. And that should be able to blow most of it up to Montana. Sorry, Montana. But they're going to get most of the smoke all the way up. All right. Some of the other stories that I'm covering this morning, and you can change the subject if you want to. So the last coal plant in the United Kingdom is closing down because they're morons over there. But there's people who want to do that here in the United States, especially in Wyoming, just close it all down. But let's take a look at the story here and then make a comparison. The story says the closure of the UK's last coal-fired power station has been described as a tremendously important milestone in energy production. And right away they talk about green energy, and I'll just keep making the case that what they're doing is not green energy. So, Ratcliffe on Sour Power, it's a long name for a power station. And I love some of the names they have over there. At Nottinghamshire, which is one word, by the way, Nottinghamshire, is due to shut down early next week. The demolition of the site will follow shortly after, which should take about 2 years to do. The site, I don't know why, it takes 2 years to close down a coal plant, but that's how long they're going to take. Yeah, the landmark in the East Midlands has been producing energy since 1967, enough to make more than 1 billion cups of tea per day. Mike Lewis, CEO of the site, said in BBC, he was speaking to them, the closure was key to the global route to decarbonization. There we go with that again. Which, more than anything, to fix this problem, we have to get rid of that notion that's been drilled into people over years about carbon being a bad thing. By the way, I got another story coming up in a bit about CO2 and carbon being a good thing. And it has to, well, I'll just tell you now. Then I'll finish this story here. I was talking about some recycling yesterday, and I came across something that made me want to look it up and talk about it on air. And that is to recycle plastics. And a lot of plastics that those people who are really concerned with the environment, and you separate out all of your recycling and so on. We've talked about this before. Nationally, most recycling does not wind up at any recycling center. It goes to the landfill. Well, when it comes to plastic bottles, most plastic bottles wind up in landfills instead of being made into more plastic bottles or other plastic things. But there is something new that we can do with plastic bottles. We can make fuel out of them. You can take plastic bottles, like your drinking bottle, right, and turn it into, when they add carbon to it as part of the process, the breakdown process, they add carbon as part of the breakdown process. So once again, carbon is a good thing. Carbon is like a Lego in molecular structures. It fits, you click it into anything. Universal fits just about everything. So using extra carbon, they're able to break down the plastic. And when they get done with the process, they wind up with two types of fuel. Most of it can be used as jet fuel. The rest of it can be used as diesel. Yes, from plastic bottles. Isn't that amazing? So if you want to go ahead and take your plastic water bottle, for instance, and turn it into another plastic water bottle, it's a great idea. Go ahead. Or something else plastic. Or you can make jet fuel or diesel out of it. And that's going to drive the CO2 cult of climate change people just absolutely nuts. All right, well, back to the power plant. Mr. Lewis, who confirmed plans for what they call a clean energy technology, which, as we've talked about before, is not, says tremendously important milestone in the global route to decarbonization when asked for the future of a clean energy and no blackouts is possible. Oh, absolutely, he said. And as you know, that's not possible. They're already suffering blackouts and brownouts in the UK. They already are. And their energy prices are through the roof. So this is not ending well. And remember, Germany is one country in Europe that has started to turn back on, not just their nuclear plant, but their coal-fired power plants because they desperately need the energy. On the one hand, the government in Germany is saying, we're going to go toward zero emissions. We're going to reach that goal. At the same time, they're turning on their coal power plants again. My favorite story was there was a coal power, like one up in Gillette. There's a couple of coal power plants in Gillette that sit basically right on top of the coal mine, and they run the coal right up into the power plant and burn it. Well, that was what they were doing with one coal plant in Germany. Unfortunately, someone had built a wind farm on top of the mine, and so they had to demolish the wind farm to get at the coal to restart the coal power plant, which drove the so-called environmentalists absolutely insane. But, okay. We'll get back to the U.S. in this story. It says here Britain is leaning on its final coal power plant for increasing electricity supply as Arctic blast hits the country. Coal is the largest share of electricity in a generation. On Monday, since, Britain's last active coal plant, it talks about how big it is and how evil they think it is. And then I wonder, well, how much are they going to be able to get from just wind and solar? And the answer is not much. Really not much. Unless the UK wants to go to something else, they're really not going to get the reliable energy out of it that they want to get out of it. Now, we know that. In the meantime, here in the United States and even in Wyoming, we're fighting the same battle. And carbon sequestration, as you know, is not going to win the battle to keep those power plants open. What eventually happens if we start shutting more coal plants down in the United States, just like in the UK, just like over in California, which is another country at this point, we wind up with unreliable and unaffordable energy all at the same time. And the question really has to be, and how long are people willing to put up with that before they start demanding changes? We should learn the lessons that those in Europe are, apparently not the UK, but the rest of Europe are just beginning to learn. That the whole idea of reliable wind and solar is not going to carry the day when it comes to energy production. You're going to need something reliable like coal and natural gas and nuclear and hydropower.
It's not fun. We all know that. It's not fun. It's a full-time job. Conservatives, that must be so easy. You're not learning any pronouns. You're leaving your air conditioning on. You're throwing all your garbage in one hole. I'm out here. I'm like, did the compost go out? Is the compost out? How are the refugees? Are the refugees all right? What's the air quality index today? I remember last year in New York, January 15th, it was 75 degrees. And all of us New Yorkers, all of us liberal New Yorkers, we had to go outside and pretend that was bad. We had to go out on a beautiful January day and be like, this sucks, right? Climate change. I'm in a t-shirt. This is awful. Conservatives are like, wow, what a beautiful 75-degree Martin Luther King Day. I wasn't going to celebrate, but now...
Wake Up Wyoming goes anywhere you do with the Wake Up Wyoming app. Free download for Apple and Android. This is K2 Radio.
8:21's the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. All right, 888-97 Woods the phone number, 888-97-WOODS, where you can talk about what I'm talking about, change the subject. Fine, I'll just kind of roll with it. Or you can go ahead and text me like a lot of people do using the Wake Up Wyoming app. You send me text messages, And I answer both on and off the air. So, okay, let me tell you a story before I tell you about what happened here in Wyoming. Because when I read this headline, I thought, oh, I know this one. So some years ago, I got done home carrying my dad through Alzheimer's, and I just needed to find work real quick. And I ended up managing a rather large retail store in a mall. And I knew, well, I'm not staying here. I just needed work until I could find the next radio gig. And here I am with the next radio gig. Right? So all those years ago, I get a call. I'm the manager there. I get a call early in the morning from the bank that keeps our money. Every night we deposit our money for the day at that particular branch and pick up the cash for our 2 registers every single morning at that particular branch. So the bank manager calls me and says, you guys took a $50, was it $50? It was a $100 bill. And it was bleached. Okay, I have not heard about that before. What is this? Well, it's where they take a $1 bill. And remember, part of the thing with a dollar bill is that's not really paper. Money is more like a cloth than paper. And they'll bleach it. And then they'll go ahead and print on top of it a bigger bill. So the paper will match the paper test. Now, the first time they told, this was the second time they told me this. The first time they told me this, they said, you took a bad bill. And one of their suggestions at the bank is go get a marker, because there's a marker we can use to mark the bill. And if it turns a certain color, then it's real. If it doesn't turn that color, then it's fake. And the only way that the marker will turn a certain color when marking the bill is if it's made out of that cloth. So when I'm getting this second call, but I said to the bank manager, but it happened again. But I bought those markers. We've been marking our bills. Anything bigger than a certain bill, it could be like a $20 bill or whatever. Any certain bills, they told us, just go ahead when you get cash from people, which is, we don't get as much cash anymore. But when we do get cash, certain bills, mark them to see if the paper is real paper. And he said, yeah, but about that. With the bleaching process, it doesn't matter because they are using the real paper or cloth. See, if they just used something else to print a fake bill on, the marker would catch it. But when they're actually using the real cloth paper, let's call it, then it'll pass the marker test. So what you got to do is hold it up, because today's modern bills have things that will show up sort of almost like a hologram in the light. So mark the bills just in case they use fake paper or not the correct paper. And then go ahead and hold it up to the light and look for those certain telltale things that if they bleached the bill would have been bleached out. So that's anybody taking cash at a retail environment they really have to be careful, because today's printing is so easy to do. Now, if you went to a printer at work or at home and you tried to print fake money, the printer literally is programmed to not allow you. But hackers know how to get around that. And so they can sit with a modern-day printer and just crank out money. So the retailer has to be really careful. All right. Headline. Again, Cowboy State Daily. Man accused of bleaching out $1 bills to make $100 bills. Could get 45 years. A Portland, Oregon man faces charging for counterfeiting after reportedly being caught with money printing materials at a Wyoming drug bust. So they busted him for drugs, and while they were there, they found the materials to make counterfeit money. While the Wyoming judge acquitted Curtis Barnes, 45, of claims he possessed marijuana and meth, he can still get up to 45 years in prison if convicted of having and making bogus currency. Barnes was indicted earlier this month, U.S. District Court, Wyoming, possessing altered money and digital counterfeit images. You know, it used to be, in order to make fake money, a counterfeiter would actually have to have the plates that they print money with. It was quite a process. With all of the work that they had to go through in order to counterfeit money, it might have been easier just to get a job. But today, it's so much easier with computers and modern printers and so on. Now, again, if you have a printer at home or at work and you try to print counterfeit. It literally will not let you. But if you know how to hack that machine or get around it somehow, you can print. Now it's just a matter of getting the correct paper, which is what I was explaining earlier. So take a $1 bill, bleach it. I don't know why I'm giving away instructions on here. Bleach the $1 bill and take your printer and run it through and make it a $100 bill. That's what he was doing. The new federal counterfeit charges follow a drug investigation last autumn. It gives the details of that. So, let me see. He admitted that it goes into, okay. Barnes was charged with 2 counts of felony marijuana, meth possession, and 1 misdemeanor of cocaine possession. Struck a plea deal on that. But now, what about the money? This is the feds that take care of this. So, pulling from other evidence not listed in the original affidavit, U.S. Attorney's Office for Wyoming charges Barnes with possession of altered money and digital counterfeiting images. And it talks about when they filed the case in district court. This actually is something that I have to see, are they still doing this? Some of you might know this. The Secret Service used to be in charge of this. The Secret Service doesn't just protect the president. Well, these days they barely protect the president. But the Secret Service, some of you know, has also been in charge of things like counterfeiting. So they had many different jobs, including security and trying to protect someone. Counterfeiting was one of it. So you would think in a case like this, Secret Service probably would have gotten involved in the case. So yeah, if you're a retailer out there, I know this guy's in jail. He's probably going to go to prison for a good long time because of this. We'll find out what happens to the case. But just so you know, if you're a retailer out there, you take cash. There is a pen you can get if you go to your local, you can go to a Walgreens or an office supply store. You can order them online. There's pens that you can test the paper with. It looks like just a Sharpie kind of a marker, like a highlighter. And you swipe the bill, and it will turn a certain color if it's the good paper. But then you got to wonder, was that paper bleached? And that's where you have to hold it up to the light to see if you can spot those, and they're easy to see these days, those 3D hologram things, because currently the counterfeiters don't know how to, they'll figure it out at some point, but they don't know how to counterfeit those. At some point they'll figure that out, then we'll have a whole new problem. Coming up on 8:30, local news coming your way after local news update on the weather forecast. You and I get back into it. 888-97 Woods, the phone number. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Got something to say to Glenn? Use the chat on the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app and get your opinions straight to the studio with K2 Radio.
8:36 at time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. 888-97 Woods, the phone number. 888-97 WOODS if you want to call into the program. Or text me by using the Wake Up Wyoming app. So, okay. Sheepdog, you got a good point there. I'm going to mention this to people. Real quick, back on the counterfeit story. If you didn't hear the last segment, guy in Wyoming was arrested on drug charges. I think he made a plea deal with that. And then they found some counterfeiting material for money in his house. I explain how that works. And he might end up going to jail for that. Sheepdog says it shouldn't be a crime any longer. Government floods the world with phony money every second of every day. Well, you got a point. Greg in Laramie wants to talk paper money. Hello, Greg.
Hey, Glenn, how you doing?
Life is good.
That's great. You know, I'd never heard about how the pen works.
Yeah.
But I did know that they tried to help retailers out from figuring out whether the paper had been washed before.
Right.
And their idea was to put, so you would hold your money up to the light,
yeah,
and you can see the president of what that money was.
Mm-hmm.
So that was their idea. In other words, you can hold some money up, you would see, like, the president, George Washington, in the background of a 1.
Mm-hmm.
Or Abraham Lincoln in the background of a 5.
Right.
The only problem is the people looking at that couldn't determine the difference between George Washington and Ben Franklin.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And so they had to change that.
Yeah, so yeah,
start putting 5s and 100s.
That's actually pretty good. I do like that. And I think they'll find a way around it. I do know they try putting those little markers on there they look kind of 3D hologram-ish, but you know that somebody's going to figure out how to get around that.
I don't know if they'll ever they might figure out the 100.
Yeah.
I mean, you can count 100s in the mail because of that electronic.
Sure.
That's why when you're a drug dealer, you got to mail those non-$100 bills. You know?
What gets me, though, is, okay, with all of the work that they have to go through in order to counterfeit money, you could have just gotten a job.
Well, I'm not so sure Pete Rose wasn't counterfeiting money. I see him all the time and say, sports track, gambling like there was no tomorrow.
That's right. All right.
But he was a great baseball player. I want to say that.
He was. No, I'm not
Pete
even
Rose.
a sports fan, and I know what Pete Rose did.
Yeah, he was, but he was one degenerate gambler.
He was, yeah. And you know what gambling did to baseball, so I can see why they threw him out. All right, thanks, Greg. I got to run down to Colorado now. Fred in Colorado. Hello, Fred.
Good morning, Glenn. Glenn, I'd like to take exception with one of your callers, and to some degree with what you said also, if I could.
Go ahead.
You were talking about how friendly Wyomingians are, and he was bashing the Coloradoan because he wouldn't come over and move his snow.
Right.
Well, and then you said, well, maybe people that live in big cities are less friendly than people that live in the country.
Right.
I live in a town that's bigger than anything that Wyoming's got, and I will tell you, I go out when we get snow, I get my snowblower out and shovel, and I do practically 2 blocks in either direction. And I don't know most of those people that are in those houses. And I live in a big city, and I don't decide, well, I'm a big city person,
so
I'm
I
only
guess
going to take care of myself.
You missed what I said later. Because later I said, but let me add to that, I think the older Coloradans, the original Coloradans, are not that way. It's the people that came in from elsewhere that, contaminated your state that didn't bring those kinds of qualities. Because Colorado and Wyoming used to be very much alike as far as the culture was concerned, but not anymore. And you didn't change, Fred. That's not what changed.
Well, Glenn, I'm not from Colorado.
Oh, my God. Where are you from?
Michigan. I'm for where Judy's from.
Oh, my God. Okay. Well, then that explains a lot about your personality and Judy's. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, and I'd like to make the point to castigate everybody from one group. That's like saying every Russian is a horrible person because Putin's a miserable person.
Yes, but all old Russian women get ugly.
Well, I don't know. I've never been to Russia.
Okay, but Russian women, I can say this much and put them in all one. When Russian women are young, they're gorgeous. But as they get older, they all end up looking exactly the same. And it's horrible.
Well, I got to tell you, I've seen some people in this country that get old, and they look pretty ugly, too. But the point I'm trying to make is that, that's like your fat buddy from North Korea to say every North Korean must be a rotten person because the fat guy's there.
No, I understand. No, I completely understand what you're saying, and that's why I went back and said, but to my experience, people who are Coloradans, if you're from out of state and you brought those qualities with you, then good. But I do notice that whenever either they call the show or I go to Colorado, when I meet people who have been there, not just their whole lives, but even for generations, they share the same kind of qualities that someone from Wyoming would, or the Dakotas, or someone from the South, a true Southerner would. But the people that are the Coloradans that seem to be upsetting us here in Wyoming did not originally come from Colorado. They came from like California or some other place like that. And those are the people that are ruining the state.
Well, and you were mentioning Southerners.
Yeah.
One of the houses that I have shoveled and plowed the snow for years and years, the lady's from Florida because she still has her Florida license plates years later. She has never once come out and said thank you to me.
Now, let me explain that one to you.
Okay.
Part of Florida is the South, but a good part of Florida is not. If you head down, for example, to Miami or most of the cities on the East Coast, those are Northerners, and most of them came from the New England states, especially New York and up in Massachusetts, place like that. And so you can't take a look at that part of Florida and say that's the South. But if you are above Orlando in the center of the state or up into the Panhandle, those are Southerners. Those are true Southerners.
To go back to the guy who called in, to indict everybody, because how does he know? Maybe the guy across the street, he's never gone over to make an effort to talk to the guy, get to know him.
Could be true, yeah.
Or the guy might have originally never been from Colorado. He just happened to pass through here and ended up in Wyoming.
Yeah, so you're saying go over there and make friends.
Well, I'm saying at least give the guy an effort and go over and say, hey, I don't know, maybe they've never talked or maybe they've had disagreements.
Yeah.
But just to make a blanket statement about everybody from Colorado, I've been in Wyoming a number of times because I have to go to Cheyenne to the VA. Mm-hmm. And I got to tell you, every person in Wyoming has not been friendly to me.
Right, okay. But you understand, as a Wyoming talk show host, it will be my job to make fun of Colorado.
Well, I understand. And believe me, I make fun of a lot of Coloradans, too.
Okay, good. As long as we're on the same page there. It's it's in my contract. I kind of have to.
Well, and just so you understand who I am, Glenn, in my book, you're too liberal.
Oh, my God. Actually, I'm more libertarian.
Oh, I understand.
Than anything else.
But whether you're a libertarian or a liberal, or you think you're conservative, in my book, you got a lot of work to do, brother.
Okay. I appreciate the call, Fred. Thank you. Fred calling in from Colorado. So, yeah, I did. I was trying to go back because when we first were picking on Coloradans, this guy had a neighbor who wasn't helping. When snow falls and the neighborhood's buried and people get out there and help each other, this one neighbor who has a machine even just doesn't jump in and help is what his complaint was. And at first I'm agreeing, but then I stepped back and said, but I can't say that about everybody in Colorado because to my experience, this is my experience, most of the people who have the same kind of values that we have in Wyoming, and I'm also painting with a broad brush when I say that about Wyoming, most of those people are old-timey Coloradans who have those values going back generations. Okay, and so, no, you can never paint really with a broad brush. Fred in Colorado is absolutely right about that. You can never really paint with a broad brush, which is why I try to go back and say, but not every Coloradan. Just the ones who came in from places like, Los Angeles, cities like that. And as far as I'm concerned, absolutely ruined that state. All right, I'm still trying to get to a story, and I'll see if I can do it next hour. You go to the gym just to work out. Now, those of you who works on farms and ranches, you think that's hysterical. Why would you go to a gym to work out when you can just go outside and work? But there's people who need, like me, I have a sedentary job. I have to go to a gym. And so you think, you're just going to go there and you're just going to lift weights and exercise and so on. And there's no way anybody can politicize that. Well, guess again. And I'll see if I can squeeze that in next hour of the program. Let's wake up.
Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods on K2 Radio. Join the conversation at 888-97-WOODS.
8:48 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. My name is Glenn Woods. Off we go to the Icebox. Frank Gambino is waiting by. So, Frank, remember when you were a kid and you lost a tooth and it was kind of like that broken nose you were talking about earlier. It's like a badge of honor, right?
Yeah, but at least you got paid for it.
Sure, you did, yeah. Now, as you're in your later years, Frank, and you lose a tooth.
Now, then you pay.
Oh, my Lord, is it going to get expensive, too? Yeah, especially if you want a replacement tooth.
Oh, no, once it's out, it's
yeah.
Well, let's put it this way. You're going to pay more than you got for all of the lost
teeth in
your childhood from the tooth fairy.
So what you're saying then is when I lost a tooth to the tooth fairy, I should have invested it because later on I'm going to need those teeth back.
Well, you'd have invested all that money just to the price of one extraction.
Yes. Yeah.
One.
And not even an extraction. Again, what if you want to put one of those fake teeth back in there?
You need a loan.
Wow. That's really good. I say that because I came across something on social media. There's a kid who lost his tooth, and he's smiling for the camera, and he's really excited about it. Mom's excited about it. Okay, then the kid's going to be like 65 years old, and he's going to drop a tooth. And, oh, my God, it's going to be the most embarrassing thing ever. He's going to have trouble chewing. He's going to think about his dental bill. I mean, it's horrifying. And when you lose a tooth at our age, Frank, you don't go walking around smiling to everybody and point to, I lost my tooth over here. Nobody wants to see that.
No, and here's the other thing about the tooth fairy. It used to be a quarter.
Yes.
No, I bet you these kids are getting $2.
Okay, wait, okay.
Maybe they're getting $5.
Wow, okay. All right, so I
Well,
tell
if
you
you
what
lose,
we'll do
10,
here.
15 teeth,
Yeah.
that's,
Price of inflation on it, too, something like that?
Yeah.
So I tell you what I'll do here is while you're doing sports, I'll go ahead and look up what is the current going rate for losing a tooth these days.
All righty. In college football, it'll be a quiet week for the Wyoming Cowboys, at least in terms of games, as they will not play this week due to a bye, but they do have time to bask in the glow and get healthy after the 31-19 win over Air Force on Saturday in Laramie. So that was victory number 1 after 4 brutal losses. Quarterback Evan Swoboda did not play very well in each of those first 4 games, but he redeemed himself with a solid effort against the Falcons after a slow start. Swoboda made plays with his feet. He rushed for 70 yards and 2 touchdowns and was careful throwing the football for 15 of 21 for 165 yards and no interceptions. Got his nose broken in the game on Saturday, so that's a badge of honor. And this bye week is coming at a really good time for the Pokes as they have a long list of injuries. And UW plays San Diego State on October the 12th. With all this college realignment stuff going on, it's hard to keep track of everything. But the Mountain West Conference, after losing 5 teams to the Pac-12, are in search of 2 schools so they can have 8 full-time members, which is the minimum they have to have. Media reports now indicate that talks between the league and Texas El Paso have been progressing. And UTEP would be a good fit for the Mountain West. They have a long-time rivalry with New Mexico. They competed against Wyoming for years in the old days of the Western Athletic Conference and those Cowboy basketball games with the Miners in the late 1980s when they were coached by the Bear, Don Haskins. Just were legendary. Mountain West also has had, according to reports, serious interest in Texas State. So we'll see what happens next. Baseball, one of the best players in the history of the major leagues, Pete Rose, passed away at the age of 83. He had a career that probably no one else will ever have. Major league leader in career hits, 4,256. 17 times an All-Star. 3,562 games played. That's a major league record. A career 303 hitter, played on 2 World Series winning teams with the Cincinnati Reds. They call him Charlie Hustle for a reason. He ran to first base after a walk, and he ran off the field after the third out on defense every single time. On the other side of the ledger, Rose was permanently banned from baseball for gambling, and he was betting on his own team to win when he was the manager of the Reds from 85 to 87. And while his baseball credentials were more than enough to be in the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, he was never inducted because of his gambling issues. There won't be too many players like Pete Rose moving forward, that's for sure, for the good and for the bad. High school volleyball, the season moving along, and 4A Laramie at this point is 20-1. Kelly Walsh is 20-2. Cheyenne East 12-10. Natrona is 10-12. Cheyenne Central comes in at 6-14 right now, and Cheyenne South is 3-19. That's it in sports.
So, okay, this goes state by state. I actually looked this up. This goes state by state. If you're in like California and you lose a tooth, California inflation's really high.
Yeah.
So you're probably going to get about $8.50.
$8?
Yes, right. Now, if you're in some other state,
like Arkansas, you'd get 8 cents.
Something like that. Yeah, but that would be about right, especially because the adult's probably going to steal your tooth and stick it in their face in Arkansas. But okay, in Wyoming, the going rate is about $2.30.
$2.30.
Yes.
Boy, that's undervalued to know.
I think so.
Seriously undervalued.
Seriously. But then again, the cost of living in Wyoming compared to California is quite a bit different. Like, take a look at the cost of gasoline for your car between the two.
Those kids couldn't buy anything for $2.30.
No, you really couldn't anyway. I never did like it when I got a quarter. What am I supposed to do? Buy candy and lose another tooth?
Well, yeah, then you got another quarter.
Oh, cool. Thank you for coming up on some local... I'm going to write this up as a story for tomorrow. This is interesting. Hi, Kyle. Kyle's in Manville. Tumbleweed is in Casey. I'll read your notes next. It's Wake Up Wyoming. 9:06 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. It's a Tuesday, which means Monday sucks and you made it. Hang on a second now. Hold it. Oh, God. I do like what I said there, but as I was saying that, I had not set other things up. Monday sucks and you survived it. See, I don't think that's a bad one. I've been struggling for a long time how to get into the whole Monday thing. and from Tuesday, I never did have one for Tuesday. I have one for every day of the week, especially it's Friday. I'm glad you made it. That one I think I'll keep. Okay, now I have everything set up. Here we go.
Today's show is sponsored by Rabid Penguin Spray, the only spray guaranteed to keep dangerous rabid penguins at bay.
And you never know when they're going to strike.
Warning, this show contains reference to guns, liberty, limited government, low taxation, the cult of climate change, free thinking, cigar smoking, short people, rubber chickens, Karen's bureaucracy, liberal buzzwords, tour runs, traffic, toilets, terrible jokes, and more. No apologies will be issued. Guest callers may express any opinion they want without fear of being canceled. Unless you're a loudmouth jerk like Dave, then Glenn will hang up on you. Strap in, hold on to your coffee, and feel free to participate.
This disclaimer does not refer to every person named Dave, just one particular Dave from San Francisco. We know a lot of Daves. They call this show all the time, and they're great people. So don't call this program and complain that we use your name. That would be a real Dave move, Dave.
Okay, now that I have all of that out of the way, real quick here, Kyle in Manville wants to know if our friend down in Colorado just called me a liberal. No, I don't think he did. He's a conservative and a grumpy old man. I mean, he has to even admit it himself, but he's conservative and very conservative. And by his standards, I'm not conservative enough. In which case, I reminded him, well, I'm more of a libertarian. And if you're wondering, what do I mean by that? What I mean is a very liberty-minded person, which means I want limited government and people out of your way. Government needs to get out of your way, get out of the way of business as well. Government's not supposed to be doing much. So people can choose their own lives in this country, which means not everybody's going to live the way you want them to live, but that's none of your business. And the way you live is none of their business. See what I mean? That's basically what a libertarian is, which is just a tad bit different from what a conservative might be. So if he thinks I'm not as conservative as him, I would say probably so, because I am extraordinarily tolerant of other people being allowed just to live their lives the way they want to live them. As long as you're not hurting somebody else while they're doing it, go right ahead. And government's job is to protect that. Not to tell us what to do, not to provide for us, but to make sure that we're able to make those decisions in our life. Whether those decisions are good or bad, okay, that's up to the individual to decide how they want to live their life. All right, now, 888-97 was the phone number, 888-97-WOODS. There are people out there who works on farms and ranches and in the oil fields, places like that, who will laugh when they hear that somebody has a gym membership because, well, they don't need one. They just go to work every day. And all they do is exercise all day. It's part of their job, just working. Others like me, my job, as you can imagine, I flap my gums all morning long, so my job's very sedentary. So I have to go someplace to get exercise. So that should not be a problem, right? I mean, yeah, I go to a place where I can go ahead and walk, and there's a track that I walk. Sometimes I'll do the treadmill, but that's rare. And then there's weights and machines in there. That's me trying to get some exercise. So that should even free weights, and that should be pretty easy, right? That shouldn't be politicized in any way. No. Now it appears that barbells have become problematic to the gender-obsessed crowd. There's always got to be somebody. It was a Facebook post in a private group, a CrossFit coach, that a female who attended his class freaked out after he mentioned that the gym had barbells for both men and women. You would think, well, what would be the difference? I don't know. Ask the coach there. But he said we have barbells for both men and women. The woman got angry and accused him of discrimination and went to the gym owner to complain about said discrimination. For those unfamiliar with barbells, men's bars, the story says, weigh 20 kilograms in the U.S. and have a greater diameter than the women's. Oh, I see. So I know this. I mean, I just go and grab. There's a bunch of weights over there, and I grab them. But according to this, the men's weights are heavier and the grip is bigger. The women's weights tend to be smaller, and the grip is much smaller. I had never really looked at it before. Okay. Now I know. There's no rule that women can't use men's barbells or vice versa. So that means I probably grabbed women's barbells and didn't know it. But most women, even the really strong ones, prefer the bar with the narrow grip to accommodate their smaller hands, the story says. Okay, especially if it's a hook grip or something like that. So apparently, and previously unbeknownst to me, your radio talk show host, this is a movement to stop calling them men's and women's bars. Last September, one woman wrote an article in a CrossFit magazine of some kind. The case for moving away from gendered weights. Oh, God. And she calls herself a radical social justice activist. So, really? So you got to worry about every little thing? Like this even? How dare you call that a woman's weight, and why would you make it different? Okay. But regarding a barbell, the story says, it's not only inaccurate, but just plain silly. That's why activists and the owner of Rocket Community Fitness urges CrossFit box owners and coaches to designate barbells and prescribed weights differently because it's actually helpful. Barbells don't have genders, they have weights, he explains. Ditto goes for plates, kettlebells, and dumbbells. People of any gender can use any one they want so long as they have the requisite strength to move it safely. Calling for a heavier 45-pound barbell, men's barbell, and the lighter 35-pound barbell, a women's barbell, suggests that men are stronger than women. Well, now don't get me wrong, there are some ladies out there who I know that can bench press some of you guys, but, well, yeah, that's not the case, she says. It is the case, actually, but, quote, anyone who's ever stepped into a CrossFit box knows there's absolute women in CrossFit classes who can outlift men. Yeah, but on the whole, then we know this, but by watching, we do know that men genetically are stronger than women. Now, yeah, is it always case, every single man, every single woman? No, you'll meet men out there that don't have much strength to them, but as a whole, you get the idea. So, okay, there's actually, the story says, a lot of science behind why women's bars are lighter, and the grip is the way it is. And so they don't discuss that in detail in the story. There were several variables developing women's division equipment. If the weight of the bar was less than 20 kilograms, a skinnier bar would have to be longer, therefore, in order to help the woman out. So it's not just about how heavy it might be, but how it has to be gripped in order for it to be used properly. And those were people who actually designed this equipment to best fit those people who are using that equipment. I had never looked into something like that before, but okay. So once again, all you wanted to do was go to a gym and just work out. That's all you wanted to do. Just go to a gym and just go work out. And somebody has to get in there with their political and social agenda and start arguing about things. That's one of the reasons I put little earbuds when I go to the gym. And I listen to things, not music. I like to learn things, so I listen, because I'm a dork, okay? So I listen to things, and I ignore everybody else around me. That's part of the reason I do it. Smalls and Caspers. Fred got a little butt hurt. You said Coloradans ruined the state. Well, the Coloradans that ruined Colorado are the ones who came from outside of Colorado, because there was a time that Wyoming and Colorado were very much alike. But then some people came in from out of state and just destroyed the place. So, yeah, Colorado used to be a great state, but now that's going back to what Fred was saying to me last hour. But back to the gym.
In the last 11 years, 115 people died of weightlifting accidents in a gym. In that same 11 years, only one person died of eating a donut. Make good choices, people.
Honestly, he's just happy to be here. Catch Glenn Woods on Wake Up Wyoming, weekdays at 6 on air, on Alexa, and on the Wake Up Wyoming app.
9:22 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. All right, some of the messages I'm getting off of the Wake Up Wyoming app here. Let me take first off to the story that I had about the weightlifting thing. Yeah, someone's trying to start a controversy. It's more than one person. It's activists once again. Because you go to a gym and there's men's weights and women's weights. And after I thought about it for a bit, I thought, I have noticed that. I just never went over and grabbed the ladies' weights because I was looking for something a little bit bigger than that with a bigger grip. But that's what they're designed for. In most cases, the men are going to grab the bigger weights with the bigger grip. And the lighter ones with the different size grip was meant for most women. Now, is that 100% universal? No. Does that mean that women can't use men's weights and men can't use women's weights? No. But they were designed for specific purposes. That's why they were called that. Somebody has to get in and go, you can't do that because that. So, it's, Wolfie in Campion says, can we agree to ignore these, in his words, piss brains, and maybe they'll go away? Which is why when I go to the gym, for example, I like to put headsets in, and because I'm just a geek that way, I like to learn something. So I put something in worth learning, and then I go work out. And I'm not paying attention to anybody, and that's why. Every so often I do come across somebody who's every little thing, well, you can't do that, you know the type. And what I've learned to do over the years is I quit arguing with them. I just move on. And a lot of times they're still talking while I walk away. Because my thought is, if they're just ignored, or even if I've told them to their face, I don't mean to be a jerk here. I just don't care. Okay? I just don't care what you're talking about. I'm just doing my thing over here. So you go talk to somebody else because I really don't care. And the more people who do that, the more they will just go away because nobody cares. And I think that's one of the best ways to solve the problem. Let's see. Who else did I have here? Chet and Yoder. People were stupid. Oh, okay. I'm not reading that on the air, Chet. Sorry, you can't fool me. Here's a meme I just came across. This, I think, is brilliant. Every so often, somebody makes a point in a meme, and I go, wow. So I want you to think about in Florida, where they're doing a lot of repair work now because of the hurricane didn't directly hit much of Florida. It more like it scraped up the coast during high tide. And that rush of water is what caused a lot of damage, coastal damage. And so there's been a lot of power out and a lot of work needs to be done. Keep that in mind. Think about all the repair of vehicles that have to go in to clean up the roads, clean up the debris, repair the bridges, put the power back on. Now let's head up to the Carolinas and Tennessee. The first storm that went through a few months ago dropped a lot of water, so that ground was still saturated. Then this storm comes through, and that water has nowhere to go, which caused mudslides. Now, literally whole towns are gone. A lot of people missing. And I was looking at one, well, there was not a town there anymore, and I was thinking, where do you begin in that cleanup? Where do you even begin? So this means bringing a bunch of machines in, right? Machines to move all of the mud and the dirt and move the debris. Machines to repair everything has to be brought in. And the meme says, and it shows many of these machines, including a lot of electrical trucks to put the electricity back on and cell towers for communications. And it reads, not one of these power repair trucks or other repair vehicles or machines runs on electricity. And I thought that's actually more brilliant because I thought, yeah, that's true. But then I thought about it a bit more and I thought, hang on a second. Imagine if fixing up all of that damage was done by what some would like, all electric vehicles. Really? What do you plan to do? Because there's no electricity there. And even then, your wind and solar panels are gone because of the storm. So what do you plan to do to power up your electric vehicles, to repair everything, to move debris, to put power lines back up, et cetera, et cetera? You're going to have machines that run on gasoline and diesel. You're going to have to, right? You can't do this another way. So the idea of, well, everything's going to be electric. Really? Then how do you plan to clean this mess up? You can't. Because there's no electricity. The power's out. There's no electricity to power these things. You're going to have to bring in diesel and gasoline-powered vehicles in order to repair everything. I hadn't thought about it until I saw that meme. Then I realized we need to show this to as many people as possible, especially those people who disagree with us when it comes to electric vehicles. Oh, by the way, several people asked me about this. So before the hurricane hit Florida, I had read a story to you guys that there's a big concern with all electric vehicles starting fires and burning houses down. Huge concern. Afterwards, people began asking me, hey, Glenn, did you hear about the electric vehicles burning houses down? Yeah, I did, because it happened. Salt water will get into electric vehicles. And it could start, there's two ways it could start a fire. On one hand, it could start a fire just by sitting in the salt water and burn a house down. And that did happen in many places. Or when the water recedes, you might look at your vehicle and think, oh, okay, well, it didn't burn, it didn't ignite on fire with its battery-operated vehicle, all batteries. So, okay, the car must be okay. I'm going to go start it and see if it still works. That's when the fire might start. That's possible, too. And so, yeah, that has happened many times in Florida after this storm, just so you know. So there's a couple of reasons why in an emergency you would not want to have those electric vehicles. I mean, you honestly you would not want to have them. Especially when it comes to, let's go in and do repair work. Let's go ahead and hit the area with bulldozers and backhoes and whatever else we need to clear all the debris and the mud and the muck. Let's get the power company in there with all of their trucks to put power poles back up and put power lines back up. And none of those vehicles can be electric. It will not work. Coming up on 9:30, local news coming your way after local news update on the weather forecast. You and I go rolling back into it again. 888-97 Woods, the phone number. Wake up, Wyoming.
Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods. Make your voice heard at 888-97-WOODS. This is AM 1030 K2 Radio.
9:36 at time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. Off to the phones we go. Rick and Cheyenne. Morning, Rick.
Good morning, Glenn. How are you this
Good,
morning?
sir. What you got?
Hey, I was just thinking, you were talking about that machinery that would be cleaning the roads in Florida not being electric.
Yeah.
What about electric chainsaws? Wouldn't that be a hoot to watch?
Oh, wow. I hadn't thought about this. Because in order to clean up their yards, they're going to have to pull out all sorts of yard working equipment, not just chainsaws. And if everything is electric, they're screwed.
Exactly.
Unless they get a diesel generator there.
Well, they could tow one behind their Tesla with their chainsaw.
Yeah, sure they can. Yeah, until it burns up on fire because there's water on the road. All right.
And then we'll just roast marshmallows.
Okay. All right. Now you got me something to think about. Thanks, Rick. Okay, here's what he's talking about. I came across this meme, which I thought, it's a great idea. I hadn't thought about this before. Let's take a look at not just Florida right now, west coast of Florida, but up in the Carolina mountains there. There's a lot of work that needs to be done with clearing roads, not just of mud, but debris. Things need to be completely rebuilt, and including putting up the power poles and the power lines on the poles. And none of this can be done with electric vehicles. Your heavy machines are going to need to be diesel. Okay. Your trucks that pull in are going to be diesel or gas-powered trucks. You can't charge anything because there's no electricity there. Those machines are there to clean everything up, plus get the electricity going again. And with no electricity there, how are they going to get the work done? You're charging off of what? Okay, so they cannot bring in anything but diesel or gas-powered vehicles. Now, he's got a great answer that while we're at it, I went to a little while ago a hardware store, which normally when I walk into a hardware store, the people there want to check to make sure I'm allowed to be there because I'm not allowed to really. A lot of you work with all sorts of tools. People don't allow me around tools. I don't know why, but I'm pretty much banned from it. Although I have successfully operated chainsaws for many years without ever losing a finger, okay? But when I was standing there at this, it was not locally owned, a big box hardware store. And I'm looking over at, I don't need one, I'm just looking at it. There are lawnmowers, there are weed whackers, there are leaf blowers, there are chainsaws, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And even things like their handheld drills and on it goes. Everything is electric these days. All of it, everything. And I heard someone had called this program a few years ago and said, they're going all electric at some of these hardware stores. I'm looking at this stuff going, really? Every lawnmower they have is electric. Every chainsaw's all electric. Huh. And so I hadn't thought about that before. What happens if I get hit by a storm? In Wyoming, it would be probably a big winter blizzard, okay, or a fire blows through and takes down the power lines, right? And I got to grab a chainsaw and cut my way out, clear the road, et cetera, et cetera. Am I going to be able to do this with electric, battery-operated tools? Well, I'm charging them with what exactly? The power's down. The power lines are down. That's the problem. I don't have anything to charge them with. What am I supposed to do here? Now, if that sucker was gas-powered, not a problem. Fire that puppy up and cut my way through. Need a machine to move some stuff that fell, some big heavy stuff, clear the road? I got machines that do that. They operate on diesel. Not a problem. So once again, I think those people who want to go all electric and electrify everything, they're not thinking this all the way through. They honestly are not thinking it all the way through. And I do think that's a problem with in thought in general. I've noticed this, and I'm not just picking on the left here, I'm picking on the right too. Oftentimes, when I get into a discussion with somebody about pick an issue, any issue, I find that people think to a certain point and then they stop. And I have to say, well, keep going. You're not done yet. If you want to really work this problem out, you got to keep your thought process going. And at some point, you might realize, hey, this isn't going to work. So when it comes to electrifying everything, everything's got to be electric. All your yard equipment, all cars and trucks are going to be all electric. Really? Then what are you going to repair storm or fire damage with when the electricity goes out? How are you going to take care of your home and your neighbor's house and et cetera, when the power goes out? And not just you. What about emergency officials? What are they going to do? How are they going to rescue people when there's no electricity to charge up all of their rescue equipment? So they're going to have to go in with diesel and gasoline powered. They're going to have to, aren't they? Okay. So this is what you get when you think things all the way through, and I bet we can keep going from there to make sure this really works, right? We're not going to come across some kind of a hiccup. They haven't thought this all the way through. Now, in some cases, if I have this conversation with some people, they'll get it and they'll go, you're right, I can't do that. Some people, though, will never learn, and so what you have to do is let them make the mistake and make them suffer the consequences. You let them make the mistake, you let them suffer the consequences, then they start to get it. Then there's that last group, they never get it. And when nothing works out because their plans didn't work, they blame everybody but themselves. You know those people, you've dealt with them. Right now, all across Wyoming, people are nodding their heads going, yep, I know exactly what you're talking about. And they have a specific name or a face in mind of someone who's exactly that. So my point here is sometimes you just got to make people learn things the hard way.
Every year, you pass your birthday and celebrate it. However, every year, you also pass your death day and have no clue. You just keep living your life until it just ends.
What?
And now, the weather.
Whoa, wait.
Well, that image is going to stick with you all day. If it's happening in Wyoming, it's on Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods from K2 Radio. Join the conversation at 888-97-WOODS.
9:48 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. Off we go to the icebox. Frank Gambino is waiting by. So we hit Oktoberfest time, Frank.
Yes, which means fall colors.
And beer.
Beer.
Yeah, okay. So
all month.
I was just watching, we got some videos popping up now, of the lovely ladies who grab all the beers in their German outfits and go walk into the table with more beers than you could ever hope
And they
to
don't
carry.
spill.
Not a drop. Now,
then you have these guys in lederhosen.
Yes.
Who are drinking the beer
from
the ladies who deliver the beer.
Exactly right.
And these mugs are not small.
No, they're not. No,
and then the tray is full.
Oh yeah. And I've seen ladies not even use a tray and just stack beers up and carry them all like that. On the other hand, when I came back from my Cheyenne trip when I was there last week, broadcast, which I'll be there this weekend too, broadcast, and I'm coming back into my house and I have my duffel bag full of clothes, my little briefcase bag full of all the different computers I need to do the radio show from there. Mm-hmm. It's a few other things. Frank, I couldn't handle it.
And you have your lederhosen for the month,
right?
Of
course. I think it was a big part of the problem was trying to wear the lederhosen with all of that kind of stuff. Because everything kept getting tangled in the suspenders. So, no, I'm watching these ladies carry all this stuff, and I'm thinking, that just makes me look like a complete idiot, doesn't it?
You need to be more, work smarter,
not harder. My father, though, used to watch people try to carry everything at once from the car to the house, and he called that a lazy man's load.
I think you're asking for a disaster if you try to grab everything at once.
Yes, right, yeah. So my father's point...
Unless you're on the, you're living on the fourth floor.
Yes. Now, I look at it two ways. First off, my father was right to say, you should make more than one trip. I know it's more than one trip, but trust me, it's more work to try to carry everything and continually drop it all. So he's right about that.
Yeah, that's very true.
But the other hand, though, there is the challenge of, and if I can do this, I just look like so cool if I can do it.
If somebody's watching you.
Yes. But as we all know in life, nobody's ever watching you when you really do something cool.
No, they watch you when you screw up.
Exactly, yeah.
And they're going...
Yes, exactly. In fact, they're watching you,
waiting that you'll do that. Yeah.
And they might even be waiting to lay money on this. But back to the gorgeous women who be carrying beers this entire Oktoberfest. I really admire what you can do. And there's a reason that the guys are sitting down drinking a beer and you ladies are impressing us by carrying the beer.
Oh, and there's many, many reasons. College athletics, the realignment stuff just keeps going and going and going. The Mountain West Conference, after losing 5 teams to the Pac-12, we're searching for 2 schools so they could have 8 full-time members. Now, media reports indicate that Texas El Paso will accept an invitation from the Mountain West, and that announcement will be made later on today. UTEP will be a good fit for the Mountain West. They have a long-time rivalry with New Mexico and competed against Wyoming for years in the old WAC days and those Cowboy basketball games with the Miners in the late 1980s when the Miners were coached by the Bear. Don Haskins was legendary. So the Mountain West also, so they're going to have UTEP come on board and also has serious interest in Texas State. So we'll see what happens next. Now the Wyoming Cowboy football team has this week off and they can bask in the glow of that 31-19 win over the Air Force on Saturday in Laramie. So that was victory number 1 after 4 brutal losses. Quarterback Evan Swoboda did not play well in those first 4 games, but came back with a solid effort against the Falcons. And after a slow start, Swoboda made plays with his feet. He ended up rushing for 70 yards and 2 touchdowns and was careful throwing the football. 15 of 21 for 165 yards and no interceptions, and got his nose broken in that game, so that is a badge of honor. This bye week coming at a good time for the Pokes as they have a long, long list of injuries, and UWB will take on San Diego State on October the 12th. Baseball, one of the best players in the history of the major leagues, Pete Rose, passed away at the age of 83 yesterday. He had a career like none other. A major league lead in career hits with 4,256, 17 times an all-star selection, 3,562 games played, a major league record, had a 44-game hitting streak at one time in the National League, a career 303 hitter, and he played in 2 World Series winning teams in Cincinnati. They called him Charlie Hustle. He ran the first after a walk. He ran off the field after the third out on defense, and he did that his entire career. On the other side, Rose was permanently banned from baseball for gambling, and he was betting on his own team to win at times as the manager of the Cincinnati Reds, and his gambling days betting on baseball from 1985 through 1987. And the commissioner of baseball at the time, Bart Giamatti, said, "You're done." And while his baseball credentials were more than enough to be in the Hall of Fame, he was never inducted because of his gambling issues. And there won't be many players like Pete Rose moving forward. He was quite the character and a tremendous baseball player, and that other side of him that ruined his Hall of Fame chances. And that's it in sports.
Okay. So, at some point, though, I mean, he's not going to make the Hall of Fame, but somebody's going to put up something for him.
Well, yeah, and it's already, everyone knows that he should be in there, but when the Hall of Fame, which is actually run by the baseball writers,
right,
when they adhere to what baseball says, if he's banned,
right,
he's not coming in.
There's other groups out there that will find a way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. if they haven't already.
Well, it'll be coming. He had a tremendous career. It was a tremendous baseball player.
All right. Thank you, Frank. Coming up on some local business we have to take care of. Hang on, roll into news time after that national local update on the weather forecast. Let's Wake Up Wyoming.